Good afternoon. This is Dr. Matthew Dunn, host of The Future of Email Marketing. And my guest today is the famous Matthew in the email space, Matthew Vernhout, VP of Deliverability for North America at Netcore. And I'm going to do the rest of it. Matthew, Editor-in-Chief, Email Karma Publishing, EEC Chairperson, and founder of the Canadian Email Summit. This is the guy who knows email. Welcome.
Thank you very much for having me.
Yeah? How
Yeah,
how's life and career in email, and why do you keep doing it?
email's great. I've been doing it for a long time now.
You
It's
have,
been
yeah, you have.
over 20 years. I finally crossed that mark. It's been over 20
Wow.
years now. I've been in the email space, and honestly, every day is different. I'm never bored. I'm never looking for something to do. And honestly, after 20 years, I'm still surprised by the things that some of my clients try to do. So,
Nice, nice. Now we've met briefly live at a couple of things, and I've heard you speak a few times. But give people, especially who are listening, give people a bit of a sense of your focal areas within email. I know deliverability is one of them.
yeah, so it's been deliverability for about 18 years. On and off, mostly on. I've done product marketing, I've done product development, product management, network operations, sort of run the full gambit of
Yeah,
things related to email that
yeah.
way. Right on through, like I managed a customer support team for a couple of years as well. So,
Wow, there you
uh,
go.
like I said, I've never stopped being surprised by
Never stop being
clients. And
surprised. Netcore, not as necessarily as familiar a name, but certainly a growing footprint in North America. Fill people in a bit on the company.
yeah, so Netcore has been around 23 years now at this
Wow.
point. Founded in India by one of the original sort of dot-com success story entrepreneurs,
Hmm.
Rajesh Jain. He had a very successful dot-com publication that he sold. And then from there, got into hosting email for other businesses in India, and then continued to grow. And when they started asking about how do we do this marketing thing,
Hmm.
built a marketing platform.
Hmm.
We now have product lines that look at email campaigning, email transactional
Hmm.
platforms,
Oh, okay, cool.
personalization platforms, so web personalization. So if you want
Hmm.
product recommendations, story
Hmm.
recommendations as a publisher, um, journey building. We do in-app messaging, app push, web push.
Oh,
We have
wow.
about 7 or 8 different product lines
Oh, wow.
um, that all roll up into a beautiful bundle of software.
Netcore Cloud recent rebrand, right?
NetcoreCloud.com. Yes.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it makes sense with that kind of scope of services to really go ahead and put the accurate moniker on it. Are there any things that characterize Netcore's customers, industry, size, any of those things?
Being a global brand, right? We work with companies all over the world. We obviously home based in Asia Pacific, so that's
Hmm.
where the majority of our clients are.
Hmm.
But we have clients in Africa, Asia, Australia, Eastern Asia, North America, South America. So we really do touch the
Wow,
globe
wow.
when it comes to client base. And it's everything from, individual websites using the services just to send transactional messaging to themselves from their web forms,
Hmm.
right on through to giant multinational organizations that rely on us to deliver their messaging and their banking statements and financial services
Oh,
and
wow,
all of that. So,
wow.
yeah, we really do run the gambit on products and services, and then client size from teeny tiny to massive brands.
Now they scooped you up not quite a year ago.
It's just over a year at this
Just
point.
over a year. Yeah, it sounds like you're enjoying it, just given your clear knowledge of the company.
There's, like I said, there's things that some of those product lines I haven't even had training on. There's so much
Really?
to do with them. Um, and like the email products in itself keep me busy enough that
Yeah.
from the personalization point of view, I'll let the personalization team deal with that kind of
Yeah.
stuff.
Yeah. Yeah.
Not that I don't have interest. I just haven't figured out how much time I can devote to the other products at this point.
Yeah, and with a company that scale, especially global, like that's a heck of a learning curve. With a customer base that's that global, Netcore clearly had to get out of the box of everything's in English, including all of the user interface. That's a challenge that not all companies, especially U.S. companies, tend to tackle.
We're still working on that too.
Yeah.
We have expanding need for additional localization languages. So
Yeah.
we're looking at what the next round of languages will be that we're going to support.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
it's a very interesting time to sort of think about all of those different pieces and, how do you prioritize, Brazilian Portuguese over German,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Like, how do you prioritize those? And that's really where we're at right now, is looking at the different types of languages and where our user base is and which ones make sense to start first. And
Yeah.
as you can imagine, the list is long.
Yeah, we went through the job of localizing our real-time toolbox that fits in email editors, and I mean that's a relatively small and discrete code base, and it was still a ridiculously huge effort.
Right.
And like, how do I know if this is right? I don't speak, like, fill in the blanks. We're looking at the translation, going, okay, huge degree of trust there. Hire professionals, but it's not
Being
like
that we operate in 23 countries, we have a good diversification of people that speak different languages as well. So, you're right though. It's definitely different for me, where normally it's like English,
and
French, Spanish.
Yeah.
Those make sense for North American businesses.
Yeah. Yeah.
Then you start to look and say, what's next, right? Maybe it's German, maybe it's Spanish, and you kind of go from there where your client base is, and those that are asking, I suppose is the best way to say it.
And then the right to left stuff just making our heads spin around, like, you get so accustomed to that map that a language that works the opposite way is kind of
and I've been watching a lot. This is what I do in my spare time. I watch a lot of stuff on History Channel, and there are languages that are up and down, right to left, and like all in one. You have to kind of pay attention to the way that the words are written or the hieroglyphics are facing to understand where your eye goes next while you're reading. It's really interesting.
Wow. Yeah.
So thankfully we're not speaking in hieroglyphics anymore, but
I don't know. As a visual communications guy, I'm like, some of this stuff is coming back. I mean, watching the rise of emojis, cheesy as they seem, has been a fascinating thing. It's like, you say a lot with the right choice of the right picture at the right moment that would be hard to put into words. There's a real nuance to that.
Yeah, absolutely. That's true. I hadn't really thought. I'm not going to build my interface to be wingdings and emojis though. So I'll leave those ones off the list of things that I'm going to push for development.
Emojis in email, not super common yet that I've seen. Not nearly as common as in like chat and text domain.
It's getting there. We have a lot of clients that use them. We use them frequently in our own communications.
Yeah.
The challenge with emojis is different devices will render different emojis. Slightly different. So understanding the potential risk of using an emoji and how it renders for somebody on a Droid versus a desktop versus an iOS device is certainly something people need to pay attention to.
And I hadn't thought of this until this moment, but the cultural assumption that the facial expression means the same thing here and there, maybe a little bit risky, right? Is a smiley face always a smiley face? Yeah, probably, but some of the other expressions may not mean exactly the same thing in other cultural contexts.
That is true. Yeah.
Yeah. Hey, see, we already wandered way afield off email, which is awesome.
It's email related.
It's email related. Absolutely, it's email related.
Adjunct. Everything is email adjunct.
Yeah, that's true. Because you know what? If you're going to hear about it, you'll probably hear about it through email somehow. Now, you shipped the product a while back with Netcore, and I was looking for it, and I couldn't find it quick enough before the call. But what was that again?
So we launched Grade My Email.
Grade My Email, that's the one. Yeah, grademyemail.co. Was it?
Yeah,
Yeah.
.co, yeah.
.co. Okay.
So the general intention there is to help people understand email authentication, how
Hmm.
it's set up for their domains and their brands, and things that they could maybe improve,
Hmm.
and really sort of help those brands understand some of the challenges or mistakes maybe that they're making. There's a
Hmm.
lot of confusion around authentication. There is a RBL monitor there that's absolutely free, so you can go and sign up your domain, your IPs, and we will watch the most popular block list for you and send you an alert if we see
Wow.
something,
Wow.
all for free. We're
Yeah.
nice guys that way.
Yeah.
Um, and then yeah, there's other tools to help you implement BIMI, help you implement DMARC. So really trying to just provide a good solid set of tools to the industry and help people out. And I'm a big advocate, and that's where I think a lot of that came from, was
Yeah. Yeah. I
to help
figured.
people fix authentication because it's so easy to do wrong.
Right, right, fair enough. And I think most companies probably don't have a really good grasp on it. At the same time, it will materially affect their business and communications.
Absolutely. I've done studies on it before where SPF records have 80 lookups in them and the limit is 10. So, people just keep putting stuff in that same SPF record over and over again.
Yeah,
You
yeah.
know,
Now you've been at this 20 years, but it sounds like you've, I hate to say, learned a ton on the job, because it's the only way you learn things these days. But I mean, you've built this knowledge base yourself in your career, right? It's not like you go to email school somewhere these days.
no, but I did graduate computer science, information technology. So the
Yeah.
background in tech and coding
Hmm.
and development and networking certainly helped put me,
Yeah.
on the right path for a lot of those things.
Yeah.
And then yeah, like a lot of these technologies didn't exist even when I started an email,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
SPF, if you believe it, wasn't a thing when I started an email.
Yeah. I believe it.
It was developed after, and it's been what, 17, 18 years since SPF came
Okay.
around. Like, it's old tech now,
And then
right? Even
DKIM's a
DKIM's
little
probably at
younger.
least 12 years old
Okay.
now,
Okay.
maybe a little bit older. Even BIMI to a degree, even though everyone says it's the hot new thing, as a member of the working group, we've been developing it for 7 years.
Wow. Wow. Now put some
So,
definition to BIMI, because I suspect there'll be a bunch of listeners who are like, I don't know what that is.
so what BIMI is, it's an acronym. Like all things email, we have to have a funny acronym for things. So it's brand indicators for message identification. And basically what the purpose of BIMI is to allow a brand to have some control over the logo that would display in an avatar location in an email client.
Okay.
So brands that aren't doing BIMI, for example, may get an initial avatar that is just the initials of the sender, the visible friendly phone, or the email domain, depending what's being sent. Or what we've seen is someone makes the decision that this logo must belong to this domain because it's similar enough and it's the wrong logo.
Oh
So
wow.
as a brand, if you have the wrong logo showing up next to your email, is that worse than having no logo? I think
Yeah.
so, because
Yeah.
you have the
Yeah.
wrong association. So the general idea is BIMI allows brands that are strong in their email authentication practices. So you
Hmm.
have to have SPF, DKIM, and DMARC
Okay.
at enforcement.
Hmm.
So that's the first step. Uh, you have to have your logo in the proper tiny PS SVG format. So
Hmm.
it's basically a secure version of an SVG. So there's no link tracking or web beacons or anything in the SVG image, which was a concern for security purposes.
Sure. Sure.
Um, and in order to get a certificate, you have to own a trademark on the logo.
Ah. Okay.
So there is an actual manual verification that your domain and brand own the logo.
Yeah.
There is basically a group of humans that check that,
Yeah.
and it costs money. And then you get a certificate that you renew every year, just like a HTTPS certificate that you publish in a DNS record.
Yeah.
And if the the mail providers accept that certificate, and that's why there's only two providers of it right now. It's because they're the only two that have gone through the process to get certified, if you will. Someone like Gmail will then display your logo next to your email address
Hmm.
in their mail client.
I see we're right back at emojis. I happen to be logos, but we're really right back at visual communication.
Sure. Yeah. But like, I think the prime example for this, and where this makes sense is if you are, and I'm going to use an example of what I see. So the political parties here in Canada, when they send you email, we're coming up to an election, so I've subscribed to all the emails. When they send you an email, it typically comes from one of the members of the party.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't know who all the party members are.
Mm-hmm.
I know who like the party leaders are. I know who my local representative is.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe I know who some of the cabinet ministers are. I don't know them all though, right? But I get random emails from like John Smith, party treasurer.
Right.
I have no idea who he is,
right,
as an example. But if that party's logo was displayed next to the name, I'd be like, oh, at least I can make the association because I recognize the logo.
Yeah. Yeah.
So there's great benefits there.
Yeah. Yeah.
And because they've gone through the process to have their logo certified and verified, and they've done the DMARC work, and it's displayed.
Yeah.
There is a level of understanding that, okay, this logo actually belongs to this domain and they're authorized to use it.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and almost implicitly from the process you described, there's a credibility and trust factor. Like, the corner grocery store is probably not going to get to their BIMI job anytime soon. You're going to see larger brands, larger organizations first with that logo beside them, right?
Right. And there are records you can publish that are what are deemed to be self-certified or self-validated.
Mm-hmm.
So if you are a small brand,
mm-hmm.
and you don't own a trademark, but you have a logo that people recognize, you can still publish a BIMI record.
Okay.
It just won't be displayed everywhere.
Yeah.
And there might be additional requirements, such as the mailbox provider has to have a very strong understanding of your reputation and a history on your domain, and maybe they have to manually verify the logo themselves.
Mm-hmm.
So there's going to be sort of different tiers of, you may not be able to display your BIMI logo at Google, but Yahoo might accept a self-asserted logo on a brand with a really strong reputation.
Okay, good. And on the other side of the scale, if you're an email marketer at a more sizable brand and you weren't particularly aware of BIMI before, you're clearly you're making some clear arguments already for the benefit of putting the work in place, which is like mostly one time and then renewal, right?
Well, for that part, yes, but
for that
getting your brand and your domains ready is a full company project, basically, because it includes your corporate domain, it includes all your marketing mail, it includes your transactional domains, it includes maybe talking to your vendors to make sure that they can support domain alignment through authentication.
Yep.
So getting DMARC set up at enforcement is the hardest part of doing most of this.
Okay.
Because it's usually the biggest project, and bigger companies take more time to do these things.
Plus, you got a lot of cooks with their hands in the pot there.
Right. Yeah. And as soon as you move to reject or quarantine policy, then maybe you're losing mail and somebody's upset because they weren't paying attention. And then what happens? I've done this with very large brands and gone down that path of, this isn't an overnight project for a lot of big brands. It could be anywhere from 3 to 6 to 8 months, maybe 10 months or a year, depending on where you get buy-in at the corporate level,
mm-hmm.
who has control over what.
Yes.
But it's a great way to get your CISO talking to your CMO and then actually finding a project where they can work together to the benefit of the entire organization.
Right. With an actual visible result too.
With an actual visible result. And I will say, right, I've worked with clients that have seen an immediate benefit from getting their DMARC house in order
mm-hmm.
for things like better inbox placement, better throttling conditions so they don't get throttled nearly as much when delivering mail. Their throughput ability goes up, their placement rates go up, opens and clicks all go up. So it is one of those things that there is a tangible sort of end goal for brands that are maybe on the edge of reputation when they fix some of these things,
mm-hmm.
Because doing the project will show maybe some spots where you're not authenticating properly, or where you have we've seen it, a salesperson sending email through an ESP that they just pay for off their own credit card.
Yeah.
That's not approved by the company.
Yeah.
Um, you know, there are lots of those things that happen. Um, One story I was told by another deliverability consultant is they were working on DMARC with a client, and the client said, "Well, we only have 4 email vendors. This will be real simple." And they turned on DMARC in a reporting only mode, and they had 18 email vendors that many they didn't remember using or a different department was using, and they had no idea.
Yeah.
So tracking down who's using those vendors
Yeah.
can definitely take some time, and getting them in line and getting them in order. Um, I've seen brands getting spoofed by their competitors as a way to drive their reputation down or steal customers.
Wow.
So yeah, there's lots of things out there that impact your reputation that until you sort of start looking for them, you may
Yeah.
not even know.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, something that probably wasn't necessary at some point in the past, but as volume goes up, as the ROI of the channel keeps climbing, worth paying attention to.
Absolutely.
Are is adoption of BIMI from what you've seen so far working globally? Is it stronger in some regions than others?
So there are some limitations on things like I'm not an ESP or not a mailbox provider, so
Right. Right.
I don't get to see the full global scope of things. Um, but from what we've seen and we've been able to measure through partnerships and such, adoption's growing. It's growing fairly quickly, but we're still talking like thousands of brands and not
Yeah.
millions of
Relatively
brands.
small. Yeah. Early.
But 2 years ago it was 1,000 brands, and now it's 20,000 brands globally. So
Nice.
it's doing its thing, but I think now that we've seen the launch of Google adopting it, it'll
Yeah.
grow faster.
Yeah. Okay. Makes
Um,
sense.
but yeah, like brands are absolutely doing it. They're absolutely interested. We get tons of questions. The BIMI group, we get tons of questions. I get them through work, through clients. There are some limitations about right now where you have to own trademark
Oh,
or sort
yeah.
of
Okay.
approved regions as a
Hmm.
starting point.
Hmm.
Those will continue to grow and change over time. Um, but we don't necessarily. I don't have any control over that. But the general idea is like a trademark in a small country in South America maybe won't be recognized like a trademark from North America.
Okay. Okay. Gotcha. I'm curious about a different angle on BIMI because not many people have the chance to do it. What was the working group standards group process like? It sounds like it took a number of years.
Yeah, so adoption, we finally got uh, Yahoo, Google, and Fastmail
Right.
publicly talking about it. We've
Uh-huh.
seen some other adoptions in the wild of mailbox providers testing it
Hmm.
um, that haven't necessarily disclosed it to the group. So I can't say it's available or public or anything like that because I don't know what their testing process is. We've seen other mailbox providers certainly asking about it, but I would say for the most part, brands are the ones that are currently the most interested in it.
Interesting. It's
Um,
got to be a little gratifying. That was.
there's at least one Android mail client that has come out publicly and said they've developed a BIMI functioning mail client for
Hmm.
mobile.
Hmm.
Um, Yahoo Mail client is working. I believe the Gmail client on Android is working. iOS will be working soon.
Hmm.
So, it's coming. Consumers will start to see it in their phone, in their desktops.
Yeah.
And then as brands adopt it, it'll become more and more prevalent.
Got it. Got it. Wow. It's at some point you'll be the guy with the gray hair going, I helped start that. Right?
I'm
Nobody.
already that guy. I got some
Yeah.
gray hair already.
No, not really. Hey, shift gears for a second. What are your thoughts about the Apple mail privacy thing that a lot of us have been discussing for the last couple of months? I mean, we're having this conversation in August. Apple announced it in June. In theory, it's coming in September. Potentially big impact, maybe not. What do you think?
It's certainly going to impact in some areas. It's going to impact where journey builders maybe are looking at taking action after an open,
Mm-hmm.
where you get 100% open rate against Apple users. So there's going to be some things there. Um, it's certainly something that ESPs are interested in trying to identify and
Yeah.
maybe build safeguards into those journey building programs to
Yeah.
say, instead of, if I can identify it's an iOS device, don't trigger on open,
Yeah.
trigger on click,
Yeah. Right.
those types of things. So there certainly are changes from that perspective. Um, Open rates, however, I've always viewed them as directional.
Yeah.
They're not necessarily going to be anything that I would put a ton of faith in as a key metric.
Mm-hmm.
It's not a KPI in my opinion.
Mm-hmm.
It's a directional indicator, simply because, being in the industry so long, we used to have drive-by opens because every image rendered when you looked at it through your email client and you
Yeah.
scroll by.
Yeah.
And then we had images disabled by
Yeah.
default. And then we had images re-enabled by default. And now we're going back to every image is enabled and called. There's lots of people that read email without images enabled. So how do you track them if they're not calling? So open rates at best are directional, but they're really useful in many cases for someone like me helping with deliverability issues.
Yeah. Yeah.
So if a client has a 0 open rate right now, I can say, well, you probably went to the spam folder. It's a good indicator that you had bad delivery. Let's look at the message. Let's look at your program. Let's go through and do some consulting and figure that out. Now we're going to swing the other way and say, well, you have 100% open rate. Great. Well, what does that tell me? And it doesn't tell me anything, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So, we're going to have to build models that exclude iOS device and Apple device.
Mm-hmm.
You're still going to get opens from desktop webmail clients. You're still going to get opens from Android devices, at least for now. Assuming that Google doesn't go forward and do the similar thing in the near future. But yeah, open rates are interesting. I've always much preferred looking at click to rates, click to open rates.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Conversion metrics as much as possible, because I think it tells a better story.
Yeah.
But it's going to throw a lot of people for a loop, I think, in regards to how they adopt and change in the new world order, I guess, for open rates.
Yeah, and I mean, it's one of those things that it wasn't designed as a standard. It became kind of a de facto common practice, and with a field where people tend to come and go. They pick up expertise as much from the ecosystem and the tools as anything else. Oh, open rate is something I can measure. Okay, I guess I measure open rate. Wait, open rate's not the same anymore? Shoot. I guess I'll have to learn about that.
And even different email platforms record things different, right?
Yeah.
Like some email platforms, you get every open, and so
Yeah.
it's non-unique open.
Yeah.
And then some platforms only show you unique open. They don't show you all the opens.
Right.
Just like click rates. So there's not even a consistent metric across the industry that you could say, well, an open rate is measured like so.
Yeah. That's true. Well, if nothing else, my my sense is that Apple's proposed change has ignited a bunch of discussion and review and reconsideration. Like people are going, oh, hang on, how are we using it? Is this the right measure? Is it just directional, as you said? Even if Apple didn't flip that magic switch, I think open rates would be a different thing going forward.
Oh yeah, I think so. And you've seen other brands talking about this, or other mailbox providers talking about, like, should we be tracking opens? Should we disable opens?
Yeah.
There are plugins that do it for you now.
Sure,
So it's not new. It's an ad blocker of sorts.
Yeah.
So it'll be interesting to see how it rolls out and how the industry adapts and changes. So I know we've got a ton of stuff in the hopper right now, trying to figure out how we're going to address it and educate our clients.
Yeah.
And honestly, the clock is ticking, and it's September. The way that things are going right now, I'm surprised it's August, but September will be here tomorrow. It feels like.
Yeah. I mean, it does feel like it's coming fast. We've been testing the beta builds. Just upgraded a couple of devices today. Like, this is going to go live. How soon? holy crow, right? Like,
Right.
bam. Yeah, yeah, it feels really fast. I also think I think small medium businesses where there's no one whose job title says email marketing, but they just do it. I think it's going to be a little more consternation or a little more burden on vendors to educate there because it's not someone's day job.
Right. And I think we have a long history to, retrain or re-educate people because yeah, open rates we used as vendors for years. We talked, oh, great open rates. We love open rates. Really, when open rates were always sort of directional,
Yeah, 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 yeah.
you know.
Hey, shift gears a different direction. With as much depth of experience as you've got in email, I've had a couple of guests on this program from the world of text and messaging because those two things definitely coexist in the world. I don't think one is a replacement for the other, but they do coexist for a marketer. What's your perspective on where texting and messaging is and where it might go?
I'd say we have a product that does it, and it's huge in our Asian markets.
Yeah.
WhatsApp messaging directly to consumer, SMS messaging directly to consumer.
Hmm.
So it's not quite as deep in penetration, if you will, in North America, but it's growing.
Yeah.
Um, Maybe I'm just old school, but I don't care for SMS marketing. I don't want it.
Me neither.
I find it to be way more intrusive than email, personally, but other people love it. And maybe I'm just that guy that's going to be the old codger sitting on the front porch and saying, "Stop texting me." For me, texting is a channel that I reserve for friends and family and
Yeah.
communication that way.
Yeah.
I don't want messaging marketing
Yeah.
coming through it. Have I seen some really cool uses for it? Sure. Text to opt into email. That's a great one. I've seen, text to win. Okay, that's pretty cool. But again, I don't want to be signed up for text marketing afterwards.
Right. Right.
You know, I, people love it in other regions. I just don't know if the experience in North America the same way that like in China where you can buy stuff through text messaging.
Yeah.
Or through WhatsApp or through,
Yeah.
WeChat, those types of things.
Yeah.
I just don't know if it has the penetration in the marketplace in North America, so we're just not used to it.
Yeah.
Whereas in those other countries, they do have that experience and they love it.
Well, and you also put your thumb on a critical thing. In North America, it's a very fragmented market. China, it's like there's one app to rule them all, and that's what you use. Other markets, bigger penetration for a platform. And in North American market, it's like, wait, by texting, do you mean iMessages? Do you mean WhatsApp? Do you mean Facebook Messenger? Do you mean SMS? Do you mean like, bleh? And they don't talk to each other necessarily.
Right. And that's my big problem, like because I'm so connected across. I use WhatsApp for work. I use Signal for communicating with some people in Europe because it's their preferred.
Yep.
I use Telegram for
Yep.
other people. I
Yep.
use iMessage for texting with friends and family that are local.
Yep.
So all of a sudden, I have 5 different chat messaging solutions.
Yeah.
And it's hard enough to keep up when you also look at things like, well, I can chat within Instagram. I can chat within Snapchat. I can chat within. Now all of a sudden it's beyond just what I would look at as a traditional text conversation into it's now also a social texting conversation.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'd say
Venmo
that's the
even.
one. Yeah, I would. Well, Venmo's not in Canada, so I have zero.
Oh,
input.
interesting. So quick side story on Venmo. My sons who are in their 20s now started just like they absorb it from the atmosphere of Venmo so that they can pay the roommate back for the pizza or whatever. And then at some point it was like, oh, here, Dad, I'll pay you back for gas. I'll Venmo to you. Oh, crap, I guess I need a Venmo account. But Venmo, I think they modified it recently. But I would occasionally open the Venmo app. I'm like, why am I seeing, Noah is paying Zane for the broadband? Like, I don't care. But Venmo had sort of monetized the short message on the transaction to to keep noise and to keep interest. Like,
Right.
wow.
Sure.
Yeah. Like,
Yeah. 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 For whatever reason, I hear people talk about it all the time, and it's just not available here. At least
yeah.
as far as I know, it's not available. And if it is, I have nobody that wants
Yeah.
it.
Nobody
So
wants it. Is there an app used to exchange money commonly in Canada?
yeah, there's a service called Interact. So you can do Interact e-transfers right
Oh
from
yeah.
your bank
Okay.
account.
That's Interact's
So I
been
can do it from my
around.
banking app. I just put in the person's email address, how much I want to send them, and hit the button, and off it goes.
Wow. Okay.
So, there's a security word that goes along. They have to know the security word on the other side.
Yeah.
Um, or you can set it up that anything that hits my email address gets auto deposited into my account. So um, that's maybe why Venmo is not as big of a deal here, is because it's so easy to transfer money between individuals, between the banks, because they're all plugged into Interact already.
Interact already, and Interact's been around. My recollection, it's been around for a good long stretch.
Yeah,
The U.S. market lagged badly in the sort of fintech space for a long time, and I
right.
think it created opportunity for the Venmos of the world and the bank backed things like Zelle to start to show up. But it's still it's a freaking mess.
Yeah, and like PayPal is still a big deal.
Yeah,
Like transferring money from
yeah,
PayPal to PayPal
yeah.
is something. I've accepted PayPal payments for consulting work I've done because it's easy. I don't have to wait for an international bank transfer. It's
Yeah.
actually cheaper than an
Yep.
international bank transfer.
Yeah. Yeah.
You don't have to worry about like I don't have a Venmo, you can't pay me that way, right? Like that
Right.
kind of stuff. So
Yeah.
it's more universal almost to say just here's my PayPal, send it here, or send them a bill through PayPal.
Yeah, that layer above the national borders, like moving money across those. And it's funny. I thought PayPal might wither and die because it was kind of just hanging out in eBay land for a while, and then they spun it out, and they seem to have recognized what their assets were and come roaring back to life over the last 5 years or so.
And they just launched a international money transfer, X.com or something like that, which is a brand I think that they've owned forever, but they just didn't use, and then
Didn't
they
use.
brought it back,
Interesting.
right? Because I
Interesting.
actually think X.com was one of the original Elon Musk projects that
I think you're right.
merged into PayPal.
I think you're right.
And then when PayPal got sold, they just kept the
Yeah. Kept the domain.
assets, and now it's this international money transfer thing.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. That space is only going to get more interesting, right? Cyber Um, yeah.
It's so ripe with fraud too, that whole
Oh man.
right. It's crazy. If you ever want to read about types of scams and fraud that happen, go to the scam subreddit
Yeah.
/r/scams. They talk about everything from money muling to sugar daddy, sugar mama scams
Yeah.
to people scamming you on Craigslist to things to watch out for, dating scams, like all
Yeah.
that. It's so educational sometimes. And occasionally I've actually found stuff in there that's been useful to other people I know.
Yeah.
Oh, hey, there's a Dropbox on this mailbox provider. Hey, I know somebody in their abuse desk. Hey, you got a Dropbox on your network. Maybe you want to look into it, right?
Yeah.
Those types of things.
Yeah.
So you sometimes find the odd nugget there, but there's some really interesting stories. And I've learned quite a bit, like quite a bit about
Interesting. I
different
think I saw.
types.
I think I saw you pop up on Reddit. Like I don't think we're connected or whatever the heck you do on Reddit. I'm like, I think that's
I've seen you on Reddit for sure. I've
Yeah.
definitely seen you on Reddit. So
Yeah, I'm most active in the forum for my SUV of choice, which is kind of funny. Like I'll dip into the email forum and some of the other professional stuff, but I notice where I post most is where I've spent sort of hobbyist time, which is kind of funny.
everyone's allowed to have hobbies outside of you.
It's a darn healthy thing, and you're pretty active on the Email Geeks Slack channel as well, and on LinkedIn. I noticed.
Yes.
Yeah, yeah, you're all over that, which is yeah, that's hugely beneficial to people to have someone with your experience willing to invest the time to say, "Oh, let me answer that question or connect you with this person or whatever else."
I've learned over the years that even though I'm not in sales, being nice to people, helping people with connections, helping people with simple questions that aren't going to take like 5 hours of my time to resolve,
Hmm.
um, actually leads to business. Because people remember like, oh, that guy helped me.
Yeah,
I
yeah,
should go look at his company and see what they do.
yeah,
Oh, they do that thing that I need. Or maybe
yeah,
they
yeah,
they do that thing that some of my friends need.
yeah,
And they're like,
yeah,
oh, that guy helped me out. You should check him out. It
Yeah.
helps. We've
Ambassador.
absolutely, over the years, landed business with different companies I've worked at that way.
Well, that's also I worked in Canada a ton over the last 30 years. It's like that's also very much the national character. Like you're a good ambassador for it, but it's one of the reasons I love working in Canada. It's like, ah, man, you guys are a lot nicer.
We have our moments. We're not that different, but yes, we have
Yeah,
our moments.
yeah. Not that different. I actually I drove literally drove across the border. I can see Canada out my office window. No kidding. And I drove across the border every day for about 4 years for a position working for a Canadian company and learning what was the same and what wasn't the same
Yeah.
was kind of like you said of email every day a little bit of a surprise. I'm like, oh, we're not that different. Or oh, you do what? How? Huh? Guess that makes
I've
sense.
learned that now that I work for an international company based
Yeah.
out of India as well. There's different ways to do things, different cultural things that just sometimes surprise you, and you're like, oh, okay.
Yeah.
There are clearly different phrases that get used frequently.
Yeah.
That when you're first starting out, you're like, what does that mean?
Yeah. Give me an
Because
example.
so a very popular one that I find to be very personally I find it to be very funny, but it's just like a phrasing, and it's no different. So like I have friends growing up that spoke both French and English. French maybe is even a first language, and when in French, when you do the direct translation for something, like if you were to say like, "Can you turn the light off?" You'd say, "Can you turn the light off?" But in French, they say, "Can you close the light?"
Oh, wow. Okay. Yeah. Yeah.
It's just the literal translation. It means the same thing, but it's like, "Can you close the light?"
Yeah. Yeah.
In India, when I want to say, like, if I say, okay, that's approved, go forth, go and do it, they would say, please do the needful,
Nice.
right? Which
Interesting.
it's one of those things that it means the same thing, but when you read it the first few times, you're like, what are they actually asking me?
Yeah. Yeah.
But it's also something that is extremely cultural, and I'm sure you could find 100 of these different things for
Yeah.
every culture.
Yeah.
That it was a new experience for me, and it was actually very welcoming. I find um, working within different cultures is an incredibly mind opening,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Working with people from all over the world, you learn so many different things about culture, about the world, about life. Um, it's just amazing.
Now, given the just a year and a bit and pandemic, I'm guessing you have not visited the Netcore headquarters in India yet.
No, not
Wow.
yet. It's on my list.
Yeah.
There's a standing invitation for when it's safe to travel.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, in fact, actually, I have only physically met my boss maybe one time ever,
Wow.
and it was before he was my boss.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. Reality.
So,
Wow.
I think there's only like a very small number of people that I've physically met face to face from the company, and it was never in a time where I actually worked with them directly. It was always at an event or
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
you and I, right? We've,
Yeah.
we've seen each other in person 3 or 4 times over the last decade.
Yeah.
It's probably been the same way.
Yeah.
And you kind of meet in the hallway. Yeah, nice to meet you. Good to see you. And you're gone.
Yeah. And you're gone. Yeah. Yeah.
And now I talk to you.
Only now that's the implement. Now, have you worked remotely? You've worked remotely for multiple companies, I think, right?
This is now the third company I've worked remotely
Oh,
for the most part.
okay.
So when I was with 250 OK, I was fully remote because I was the only Canadian employee.
Okay.
So it didn't make sense to have an office.
Yeah.
Before that, when I was working with a company called Inbox Marketer, I was the only employee in Toronto
Okay.
for a long time. So it didn't
Yeah.
make sense to have an office. And then
Yeah.
we hired a couple more people in Toronto. And then I had to go into the office every so often. I had to go to head office more frequently. So I still saw people.
Yeah.
But I would say for the most part, I was remote for that. So it's probably been 4 years full time, and let's call it 6 or 7 years part time
Part time.
remote
Wow.
on top. Like
So
total.
you were already kind of in that gear
Yeah.
when everyone got in that gear.
Yeah. When pandemic mode happened and everyone went remote, I was like, what's the difference?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I've been remote for most of 20 years, so it was like, yeah, I got work to do. See, right? It's like this
All
is a
done. I got
non-event.
it.
Yeah.
I'm productive on my own. Thanks.
Yeah, you're like really. Yeah, I'm really good at going in the office, and no, I don't do laundry in the middle of the day and stuff like that. But it's an adjustment. I hired a VP of marketing and creative director. Hired him away from another company once, and the creative director was like, "Oh, this will be so great! I finally get to work from home." Drove her out of her mind. She was in Vermont. Most of us were in the West Coast, and she would literally stalk us the minute someone showed up on. It was Skype at that point in time. The minute someone showed up on Skype, man, she was all over it. She was craving contact and interaction. We eventually made an arrangement for her to rent a desk. I think at the company her husband ran, so that she could be in an office with other people. Much happier.
It's and it's different for everybody.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely.
I like being around people to a degree, but I find I'm way more productive when I'm sitting in a room by myself.
Yeah.
I do miss the let's go for a drink after work kind of thing. But before the pandemic, the Toronto email community, which is actually huge, we used to do monthly meetups. So you'd be once a month, maybe twice a month, depending if we did a social and an educational event. We'd get together, you'd be hanging out with email geeks that you want to talk to about email related stuff. You might learn something along the way, and you build those friendships and relationships. And I think that's why if you ever sneak into the Canadian channel on the email geeks, it's very active because we're all very busy and we all know each other.
Yeah, that's nice. Yeah.
And it's coast to coast. Like I know a lot of email people out West Coast.
Yeah.
I know some people even on the East Coast.
And that, even one or two face-to-face opportunities, casual, social, conference, whatever, like it makes a different bond.
Absolutely.
And pays off.
It does. And I think for me, I'm extroverted enough that I don't need to be in front of people. I can do everything I need to over a video chat or a phone call. But occasionally, you need that little energy boost to actually like get in front of somebody and have the conversation face to face and share a dinner, share a beer, share whatever.
I literally yesterday, first time since the pandemic that I actually went and sat at a brewery with a buddy and had a beer and just talked. I mean, I'd seen them at their house and whatnot, but it's like, nope, just the two of us sitting outdoors. Yes, I know we'll be outdoors. Having a beer, like, thank you. This feels so good. I don't know why, but
well, that's actually something that we're looking at right now, that things are fairly stable here in the Toronto area.
Getting better.
Like, do we do an outdoor social?
Yeah.
Like a bring your own picnic kind of day.
Yeah.
Just invite all the email geeks and their families and just observe social distancing and just see each other again. It's been like 18 months since we've seen each other.
Just see each other.
So it's something that we're looking at and trying to plan. Find a weekend when it's not 40 degrees centigrade and when it's not thunderstorming
and do it before you have to be in the big park down in
and do it before snow comes. Yeah, exactly.
you've got that window.
We're running out of time. So
yeah, man, it gets cold in your town, I gotta say. Oh geez.
Plus 40 in the summer, minus 40 in the winter. It's an 80-degree swing over the course of the year. So it's all centigrade for those listening. Centigrade,
right? For those transmitting. Well, yeah, it'll happen. It's just we'll all have to unengineer some unconscious habits too. Like I found it easy to get in the groove of sort of, just keep doing the thing. It's like, wait, it's been how many weeks since like go a week without leaving the house? Wow.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Done that.
Yeah.
If I didn't have a dog, I'd probably never leave the house.
Right. Yeah.
Forced to go for walks and stuff.
Forced to go for walks. Yeah. Groceries show up and all that other stuff.
Yeah. But like we started doing like patios and outdoor drinks with friends and
good
stuff. But like we're all looking at it and being like, okay, well, we've all got vaccinated. It's all been a couple months. We're all feeling good.
Yeah.
As long as we're away, and patio spacing is still a thing. So that none of the tables are close. So, we're still at like that 70% capacity thing too. So it's not quite full capacity like most of America has put their foot to the floor and off you go. So
yeah, we're struggling with we're struggling with those decisions as a whole, but can't do it for
it is what it is.
It is. Thank you. It is what it is. Well, thanks so much for the time, and really, whether or not this is a podcast, actually, I've been looking forward to a chance to talk with you a little more in depth because I've got such regard for what you do in the space and what you've contributed to us. Like, it's cool.
Thank you.
Yeah. So here we go. Official wrap up. My guest has been Matthew Vernhout, VP of Deliverability. Why am I having trouble with that word today? Deliverability.
I stumble over it all the time. I've been saying it for years. I still stumble over it. It's not the prettiest of words.
No, it's a lot of syllables stuffed in that little sucker. You're like at the tail end there. Hey, thanks for the time, Matthew. We'll get this published and turned into content, but it's been a great conversation.
Awesome. Yeah, I've had a lot of fun. Thanks very much for having me.
I'm gonna hit the stop.